that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello, everybody. It's been a while. Well, so by the time you're seeing this, I have reviewed the newest Halo book that came out in December. But for you, this is now like we're halfway through 2026. This came out at the beginning of 2025 in like February, and I just never got around to it. But I'm reading it now, or I have read it now, which is Halo Empty Throne by Jeremy Patnude. I'm not exactly sure to pronounce that. But this takes place basically like right before Infinite and during Infinite. So, originally that's why, because, all these books that were coming out around the time of Infinite's release were either prequels to Infinite or like during Infinite, like Outcast was during Infinite, and I just didn't care. It's hard to remain interested. Now, of course, that newest book by Kelly Gay, it was like, well, for the first time since 2019, we're getting a story set after Halo Infinite, which, okay, let's get the ball rolling. If I had to say anything, I mean, if you're a Halo fan, you watch Halo, you watch Hidden Xperia, so you already know the plot. But in case you don't know, before anything, this is a massive love letter. I know a lot of fans say they don't want the novels, and I think that's really stupid and dumb. It's like one of the last bastions of an expanded universe is actually like expanding. Because as a Star Wars expanded universe fan, I had my stuff deleted without any completion. A long time the EU movement was all about give us more legends, which separate timeline, continue it on. But people don't want to do that. They don't want to invest time in it if it's not going to be connected, because people aren't going to care as much automatically. So it's like, what do you do? What do you do? So it's annoying, basically. But with an expanded universe, things can actually connect and matter, and it's cool. And in terms of the novels, Halo always does that. In terms of, you don't actually need most of these novels to understand the video games, because that's one of the complaints people had about 343, and it's not true. Like, you can play Halo 4 and 5 for the most part without any like Jewel Mandama was like kind of in 4, not really. He kind of became a character in the novels as a justification for a Covenant faction in Halo 4, and then he gets killed in Halo 5. And of course, if you've never read a Halo book ever, then you have no idea who Blue Team is. But other than that, like, you don't really have to read the books to understand the games. So I feel like that's a dumb argument that people make. But at the same time, you do want some important things to happen in novels only. Otherwise, why pick it up? Like, people got really mad about the death of a certain character from Halo ODST, and I have gripes with how they did it. But the fact that that person died in a novel is not my issue, because it gives me more reason to actually spend my money on it. Because, like, oh, this actually matters. Because that's a problem you have with tie-in fiction. You can't actually have anything important happen because everything important has to happen in the games, right? And I think that's dumb. That's the whole point of expanding universe. Obviously, you can have the most important things happen in the novels because it's a primary video game franchise, but you should be able to do important things in the novels so that there's a reason to read it. All that to say, this is a massive love letter to the expanded universe of Halo specifically. And a love letter just to the history of this franchise, and kind of like a passing a torch onto the next phase of things. We get characters returning here from like Karen Travis's book. So, with with Saren Osman and the Black Box AI, or we have Artos Vadam, half jaw back, or um, I'll save one for spoilers, but a certain character that has not appeared since the Fall of Reach is in this book, and it's awesome. You know, um, we got Grey Team again. Halo Envoy, everything. They're back. So there's a lot of these connections here, and a big one again for the expanded universe because the Cole Protocol is literally only a novel thing with Admiral Preston J. Cole, being like the best military strategist of the franchise, and again passing the torch. We have the daughter in this book, so there's a lot of love to what has come before, and giving resolution to a lot of these things as we move on to the next phase of the franchise, and leaving little tidbits for other books to pick up, and maybe even for the games to pick up. I think a big flaw of the expanded universe and the games just as a whole is the different enemies and the different factions. Like, just give us one solid through line. Then Halo Infinite, we have the Banished, which is kind of like, it was supposed to be like the villain now. But then you also have like, the Endless now, and whatever that entails. It's like, just give us something solid to follow through. And I had completely forgotten how there were these people with Jewel Mandama, and then they kind of made their own separate thing for a bit, and all this BS. But now it's a lot more simpler. They have joined up with this other faction, which we'll get into in spoilers. But that just makes it kind of a larger faction. That's one. Then you have the Banished. That's two. Okay, that's it. And then you have whatever's going on with the Endless, because the Created are no longer a problem because Cortana's gone. So, yeah. So I think that's a good way to kind of move it forward. I don't think the Banished could have ever been a thing long term anyway. So, it would be interesting if we get a sort of restoration of the Covenant back and everything that might entail. And as Hidden Xperia said in his video, which I watched after I finished the book, we have been missing out on the prophets, and I think the prophet that is introduced in this book is super interesting. And hopefully they keep up the momentum moving forward. But all that to say, as I said, it's a massive love letter. But it takes place a little bit before Infinite and then kind of during Infinite. But basically, while Master Chief, he's unconscious for 6 months, and then he goes on to Zeta Halo, beats Escharum, deals with this Endless thing a little bit, and realizes that Cortana's already taken care of herself, and that problem is over. But while all that's going on in the games, there's a whole separate mission going on with Oni and the UNSC, and Halfjaw and everything to find this key that will give access to the domain so that they can defeat Cortana. Of course, it ends up not mattering because everything in the books end up not mattering for the games because, of course, Master Chief already took care of it. But it does explain some things, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I've been completely honest with these tie-in Halo books that I've not been a fan of a lot of them. A lot of them are just kind of whatever. But this one was a lot better. And it's because this man has worked on the series for a long time, and he cares. He cares about it, and you can feel that, and it's appreciated. And so I hope the books continue for a long time, and I hope they find a better way of just integrating stuff. I don't think everything should be done in the books. Obviously, it's not a book franchise. It's a game franchise, but there should be a synergy between the two. This should be possible. I mean, there are ways to make this work. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it's worth your time. If you're a Halo fan, you should be reading it. And it's actually also a decent place to come in if you're like newer to the franchise. A lot of these books often do this, where they will give you a sort of synopsis on a lot of things to catch you up. Of course, it won't have the same emotional resonance if you haven't actually read the material preceding it. But you don't need to. Anything you need to know for this story, they will tell you in the pages of the story. So, but yeah, so basically a whole bunch of different storylines. Basically, we have uh, Preston Cole's daughter, Abigail Cole, and she's got her whole thing with with her mission, and then we got Halfjaw working with the Gray Team to focus on this. We have this new thing with the Banished, with this new character called Severin, who we'll get more into him in spoilers and what he's all about. But what I will say, because I don't think he is a double agent. He's high up in the Banished, but he actually also works for some other figure. That other figure being that San Shiyum I mentioned, the Prophet, which we'll get more into in spoilers. But so there's a lot of, top of everything else, like a lot of politicking going on, which I think is really cool. And it's just kind of like a mesh of all these storylines, separate, and then they kind of converge into like one thing by the end of it. And I thought it was really good. Thought it was definitely worth your time. So I'm gonna get into some spoilers. If you don't want any of that, well, no. And there's a door. Any direction that's not here. Okay, awesome. We have a character named Octavio Morales. I don't even know. He works for Oni, and he began the book because he's like watching the official helmet footage of Master Chief in Combat Evolved. And we meet Abigail Cole, the daughter of Preston Cole. Lord Hood's still around and kicking, and he's boxing and he's working out at like 70. Bro's still kicking butt. We see Sarah Nosman again because she's with Lord Hood on that place they're staying at. We get reintroduced to Grey Team, and then we have Severin and Eshram. Severin, since Aatrox ends up going on this mission that of course we see in Halo Infinite, he basically leaves the rest of the Banished fleets that are not attacking Zeta Halo and Infinity with Severin. We also meet this mysterious figure called Solomon and Lola. We don't know much about him other than he is most definitely a Spartan, but not really officially, and he goes to beat up these raiders, and we get introduced to these things. I don't know if they've appeared in other things. I don't recognize it. But basically, because, the Spartan 4s and everything now, like adults can become super soldiers, and I guess that information is becoming more commonplace because we have like insurrectionists that have like botched like lesser versions of these Spartans for the insurrectionists now, so they could be on even playing field. Get out of here. But yeah, so they're trying to catch up with the times, I suppose. Toljaran, who works with Halfjaw. We do a little bit about the women's rights of the elites, and how they were broodmaids. They had kids and they did the cleaning and all that, the typical sort of patriarchal thing. But now she's able to be a warrior and everything. We have Stolt, the Angoy from Shadows of Intent. So that's fun that he's back. So Black Box carries information about the clone of Cortana. What does that mean? Clone of Halsey, really. Because Halsey made a bunch of clones to sort of make her brain work for when she would eventually create Cortana. Apparently one clone has survived. After they get this information from the Black Box BB, they agree that BB must be discarded because he's past his 7-year limit. And it's really sad, actually. We also learn that all of Severin's siblings were killed. Chorus's cousin in the Banished vouched for him. The other big thing we learn about Severin is that Severin is Tartarus's son. That was pretty wild and very cool. We also, from the, we saw it from Aatrox's perspective, but now we get to see it from Severin's as Cortana blows up Doisac. And Severin is tasked with attacking Earth. We also learn that Solomon is James. Yes, James from the Fall of Reach, who we thought was dead. James is still alive. He's doing a lot of, shady things for Oni. Things that are so shady and so out there, because sometimes they're attacking enemies, sometimes he's attacking allies. And it was a type of role where they needed complete deniability, and since he wasn't officially a part of their, their rank, it's just like a lone gunman weirdo. So that's what he's been doing all these years. We also have, we learned that Halsey's clone is named Chloe Eden Hall. And Severin obeys Novo Nesto, who is this Sanshayum who stands upright. He's not like all craggly like the Prophets of Truth and all of them from the games. And he was actually working behind the scenes this whole time. And that he's really old, but looks young, which is really interesting. He's been around since the foundations of the Covenant. And, I think Hidden Experience did it best where, like, the prophets that we saw in the games were the UNSC equivalent for the Covenant, and he was Oni, which I think is interesting. Octavio, we talked about in the beginning, he wants James to take the Halsey clone to the rendezvous spot. And surprisingly, one of the saddest parts of the book, and again, I think this really only hits if you've, played or read all the books. Saren and BB's last scene together as he gets deleted, I thought was very powerful, all things considered. I don't think you'll feel that way if you've only read this, but if you read all the things with them included, I think it does hold water there. Severin gets disillusioned with Nova Nesto, and he decides, I'm not going to be my father. My father tried to side with the prophets, and look what happened. I'm abandoning you. So he departs from him. Another poignant moment of the book, one of my favorites, James and Adriana's goodbye. James is not going to give up Chloe. And she lets him take him. And then he dies. He tells her to run off, and the AI, Lola, sends her to a planet he planned on staying at once he was done. But he gets to go out like a Spartan. And whereas his other death was a bit more ambiguous, we get a bit more definitive one here. And it's a bit more emotionally meaningful and impactful. So I love that. Preston and Abigail have a reunion, because if you remember in his short story, he just abandoned everything to be with his lover. So that was a nice moment. And then the book sort of ends. We do have this little thing at the end where Forchenko, the Lord of Admirals, and the Didact watch over from their domain heaven of all the events going on. So from Master Chief himself to everything going on in this book, they see it all and are watching. So that's kind of neat. And that's it, really. I glossed over some things, but overall, it was a good book. And excited for whatever else is to come. And I mean, by this point, you know how I feel about the Kelly Gay book. I don't, because I'm recording this before that came out. So, but you know me, recording my videos massively ahead of time. So, anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I thought I'd finished the fight. I thought I'd caught up with the expanded universe, but as the books come out, well, I guess wake me up when you need me. Till next time.